The biggest influence that government has, number one, right at the outset, is just where it decides to spend its money. Does it build a new hospital or does it maintain what it's got at the moment? Does it invest in railways or roads, or does it say we'll invest in IT infrastructure? Um, and all of that is, before you get to any trade policy, is probably the biggest influence that government has in terms of where it decides to spend its money. Once government has then decided where it is going to spend its money, then it will write a specification which it will then go out to the market. And here is where we can start saying, okay, well, do we decide that we are going to, if we're buying a fleet of vehicles, they must be electric, or we won't say anything about that. Um, what some departments will also start to do is also start talking about minimum carbon standards and also mandatory requirements. So if I give you some examples, the health service, their carbon footprint, you will see here, the largest element of their carbon footprint is the carbon that is taken to make the stuff that it buys, medicines, medical equipment, and other supply chain. And you will see that that is more than half of its carbon footprint. So NHS has said that it will aim to be net zero by 2045 for the stuff that it buys. And so therefore it is requiring its suppliers who are supplying the NHS to also be making commitments to cut carbon and to be supporting that goal. That's the same also with national highways. They run the motorways and the road network, the main road network. Spend about £27 billion maintaining roads over a 5-year period. And as part of their carbon plan, they have done two main things. So first of all, they have said to all of their large construction maintenance suppliers that, one, they must have a science-based target to cut carbon, and secondly, they have to have a certification to a standard called PAS 2080, which is a carbon management framework for the built environment. And they've also now set some maximum carbon intensity standards for cement, for steel, for asphalt, that says that, for example, if we buy a ton of cement from you, this is the maximum amount of carbon that has to have emitted. And then that gradually ratchets down as well. So they are making the market and they are choice editing out higher carbon suppliers. And then the third area is, then once government has then gone out to tender, it will then, let's say, get 4 tenders back. It then needs to decide how to choose between suppliers. And here, this is a place where government would, in its tenders, will set out some clear requirements around that. And if we, let's just say, thinking about a hospital bed, if government or the NHS is going out and saying we want to buy, let's say, 1,000 hospital beds, it will get 4 tenders back. It then needs to decide what is the weighting that it is going to put against price of those beds, the quality of those beds. So will that bed that a supplier provides, will it last 1 year? Will it last 10? Is it solid and reliable? What's the guarantee that it comes with? It can put carbon into that. What's the carbon it's taken to make that bed? And then from a social perspective, government might also say, okay, well, that's also really important where that's made. Is it made in the UK or in Europe or in Asia? And what are the other things, the benefits that the NHS might get or the government might get from that spend? So the UK has a thing called the Social Value Act that says there is a minimum requirement that 10% of the decision process, as a minimum, has to be on those 5 areas of COVID recovery, economic inequality, climate change, equal opportunities, and well-being. So that is a mandatory requirement that government has put for procurement. The challenge, I think, also for that, though, is that needs to be well applied. So we need procurement teams to understand how to really write that well in, and also that the way that those responses are evaluated needs to be sufficient that you can get some really good differentiation and you're not just coming back to price.